Welcome to Faith in Recovery with Anthony Acampora.
Welcome to Banyan's Faith in Recovery radio show. I'm your host, Anthony Acampora. Thank you for joining us. The Faith in Recovery radio show focuses on advice and insight for families of those in addiction and suffering with mental health issues, powerful personal testimonies, and guests who are expert in their field. I'm also the director and chaplain at Banyan Treatment Center's Faith in Recovery program. It's a faith-based drug and alcohol treatment center. It's in Pompano Beach, Florida. We also have locations nationally. It's a non-denominational, faith-based program. It's designed to allow clients to establish or restore their relationship with God while addressing their addiction. If you or someone you know is in need of substance abuse treatment, contact us at 888-270-5712, 888-270-5712. Or if you have any questions for me or questions that you'd like to be on the next show, call 201-538-2754, 201-538-2754 if you have questions for me. A question that you would like to be answered on the next show. We also have a Facebook page called Faith in Recovery. You could follow us on there. I want to move on here. We have a very special guest, so I don't want to take up too much of her time because she has a lot to say. Right? Rhoda Sokoloff is a family law attorney. She's a board member of the National Alliance of Mental Illness in Broward County, NAMI. She's also running for County Court Judge in Broward, Group 17. I have had the pleasure to work with Rhoda at NAMI on the board, and some other things too, some marketing events, and she's just such a heart for people that are suffering. It's just really incredible. You don't usually have that type of combination of her background and her expertise in law, and just a heart for those who are hurting and broken in spirit. And so she's a great person, and we're really hoping that she wins this election for judge in Broward County. So I want to welcome her now. Here she is, Rhoda Sokoloff.
Hello. Hi, Anthony.
Welcome.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. We've been texting back and forth about just different things about the show and things, and always liked Rhoda. She's just really, like I said, a really good person. So Rhoda, tell us a little bit about your the family law practice.
Okay. And Anthony and I go way back. I practice family law. Family law consists of divorce, child support, child custody. I also do domestic violence, and I do dependency law. And dependency law, for those who might not know, is not dependency on drugs or alcohol, but it's actually when the state comes in and takes your children. But in that same vein, a lot of the problems actually in dependency court go to either addiction or mental illness. You know, a lot of the parents, when they take their children, it's usually, well, not usually, but a lot of the times it's around that.
So it's a natural fit there with you being on the board, and you were vice president for how long with NAMI?
I've been on the board since 2002, vice president for several years. I don't remember how many. I was actually president for 1 year, then vice president.
Wow. And
now I'm just on the board.
So you've really been involved with that. NAMI does some amazing things. I know the walk's coming up in November. That's a big event for them. But they just throughout the year does some really great work and really helps a lot of people that are suffering and hurting. Tell us a little bit about your role with NAMI and what you've gotten involved in, some of the programs. I know you've taught different classes and things. Talk a little bit about that.
NAMI is really a truly amazing nonprofit company, and they literally in 2002 saved my life and saved my son's life. So I'm forever indebted to them. As a result, I took a class back around 2002, 2003. It was called Family to Family, and it's for family members who have relatives that suffer from mental illness and or addiction, because they kind of go hand in hand. And most people, I'd probably say maybe 75% of people who do suffer from mental illness do have some kind of addiction issue where they self-medicate. So what comes first?
Right. Wow. So you said NAMI saved your life and your son's life. Could you tell us a little bit about what was the experience, what happened with that?
I'll say a little bit because I don't want to,
Sure.
It's his thing.
Yeah.
But we have, and almost 1 in every 4 families have somebody who suffers from some type of mental illness or addiction. And so that happened in our family, and I was at a point where I really did not know where to go. We had gone through about 20 Baker Acts, and finally was able to get into the state hospital for 6 months. And at that point, NAMI stepped in. NAMI and actually Henderson as well.
Right.
And got housing, got mental health, got medication, and the rest really is history.
Wow. So with all the Baker Acts that was going on for that period of time, what were the outcomes, or what was not working? Because we hear this, I mean, even if you look at some of the horrible cases, the mass shootings and things like that, and even Parkland that we had, and I'm not relating that to this, but, there's so many times there's red flags, there's stumbling blocks, and a lot of times it's the system that's broken. And people want help, and they do everything they can to get help, and it's just a broken system, especially in Florida. I think it was number 1. It's like Texas and Florida, right?
I think it's number 48.
48 now?
I think it's number
Great.
48.
Moving up, right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of the worst funded states in the country, consistently, federally. And so
That really is a big issue. Number 1, there's not enough beds. Number 2, there's definitely not enough money. But when you go through the Baker Act system, they basically have 72 hours that they can keep you. And we call those who have mental illness, which is no different than any other illness. It just has the stigma attached. But we call them, or they like to call themselves, consumers.
Right.
So consumers, they can be very manipulative, and they know exactly what to say to get out and to get in. And
Right.
so if they let you out after 72 hours, sometimes you have medication, or maybe, and sometimes you don't. So it's a revolving door.
Absolutely. There's a movie that we watch with the clients every couple months, and it's called Do You Believe? And there was a point in the movie where this girl attempted suicide, and the doctor knew it, and it was an ER doctor, and the nurse knew it, and the nurse was really concerned, and the doctor kind of asked her these leading questions, basically told her what to say, and she said it, and then he released her. And I'm just wondering, that's a movie, but how many times does it happen where sometimes the facility doesn't have room, or it's an insurance issue, and they want somebody in there that can, have better payment plans and insurance, so then they're kind of manipulated out of treatment, even if the person wants it. I think it happens both ways. What do you think about that?
Oh my God, that is so true. And I can talk about a personal incident that actually was back in 2002, where my son was at Imperial Point, and the doctor was going to release him and said there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. My son also had a brain tumor, so they did not want to deal with the brain tumor, and I guess being the lawyer in me went in there and I challenged the doctor. And, unless you challenge...
I feel sorry for that doctor.
Well, I challenged, and I end up actually getting him at that point. I got him the help that he needed, and they did not discharge him.
The doctor or your son? No. Yeah, no.
Both.
Yeah, hey, you never know.
But, so many of people out there that have addiction or have mental illness don't have family.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nobody there, to support them.
Right, absolutely. It's such a difficult situation just for what we're talking about right here, but there's so many other components to it that make it so difficult. Like you said, you're basically, if we have all these different, hospitals, Imperial Point and University Pavilion, and, and every state has them, and somebody who maybe attempted suicide or threatened suicide or something happens that they needed help, they may go in there for 4 or 5 days, 6 days. So the reality is, if you just look at it from a logical perspective, if most medications take between 2 and 3 weeks to kick in, how would you even know if it worked or if you're having side effects or if it works at all in that time? It makes no sense, right? And they throw them right out.
Yeah, actually, within the 3 days, they usually give you, I shouldn't say usually, but my experience is they give you a shot of Haldol, and that really calms you down, and all you do is sleep, and then you're okay.
Right. So it's like a false positive. Of course you're going to be a little bit better if you're just sleeping and you're not really, especially if you were aggressive or something. So there's so many aspects of this. Let's go back to NAMI a little bit, because I know you spent a lot of time there.
If I can just,
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about, because it's not just the mental and the Baker Act, there's the Marchman Act.
Yes.
Which that's for addictions. And it's the same thing. You can go to court, you can get a court order, and you might get your relative hospitalized for that, but then the insurance kicks in, and then they throw you out.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I wanted to put that in there.
That's a good point. Same thing. But what I was saying before is the doctors, again, you may have pressure to not admit because somebody might not have insurance or somebody's been there before, whatever the case may be, right? And then you're going off of what the patient or the person that's going in to the hospital or ER, off what they're saying. And like you said before, they could be master manipulators. They know exactly what to say.
Absolutely.
To not be admitted. Or they might be so out of it, who knows what they're saying. How could you really base a diagnosis or a decision to admit someone that may be dealing with a life or death situation if they're totally out of it? They might not know what they're saying.
The interesting thing is if you go to a receiving facility, let's say Broward General, you go there because they do have a psych unit in that hospital, and I've seen it happen. So you go in there and just say, like, I have such mixed thoughts. I can't get a thought straight. But you don't say anything about suicide, hurting yourself, they are not going to admit you.
Right. The whole line of questioning, it never made any sense to me.
I think the Baker Act needs to be a little revamped.
It really does. But the whole thing, even in psychiatry or even with counselors and things, well, they don't have a plan, so they're okay. They've been talking about suicide, they've been thinking about it, but they don't have a plan, and then that makes them okay. I mean, I don't know. I think it needs to be like re-looked at, or a lot of different things with that. Because for those reasons, sometimes it's the facility that doesn't really want them, and then you have the person that doesn't really want to be there anyway. So a lot of people are slipping through the cracks. We're going to need to take a quick break. My name is Anthony Acampora, Banyan's Faith and Recovery Program. We're here with Rhoda Sokoloff. We'll be right back.
Are you struggling with addiction or mental health disorders? Banyan Treatment Center's Faith and Recovery Program helps people at the depths of their despair, spreading the word that recovery is possible through the power of Christ.
Cry out to him. Where are you, God? Where are you? I don't feel you. Where's your presence? Why are you allowing this to happen? He already knows our thoughts anyway. We might as well just put it out there.
Program Director Anthony Acampora will help you discover how God can turn your mess into your message. Call Banyan Treatment Center for help now. 888-230-3122. Again, that's 888-230-3122.
Welcome back to Banyan's Faith and Recovery Radio Show. My name is Anthony Acampora. We are here with Rhoda Sokoloff, and she is a family law attorney. And we're talking about mental illness and NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, which we were both on the board of, and she still is. And so let's kind of pick it up there, Rhoda. What impact has NAMI had on families suffering with mental illness?
NAMI is, it's just really phenomenal. NAMI offers so many different programs. One of the programs that I really urge families who have relatives that suffer from mental illness and or addiction to go to NAMIBroward.org. We have a class, it's called Family to Family. It's a 12-week class. It is free. We volunteer. I've been teaching it since about 2003. It's 12 consecutive weeks. And even though it seems like it's a lot, every time you go to your class, you can't wait to come back to the next class.
Right.
But it teaches you how to deal with your relative. We have workshops where examples, because believe it or not, all of us who have relatives that suffer from mental illness and addiction, we all go through the same thing. It's always the same story. So, you know, we have a little bit of humor in there, because if you don't have humor, then you don't have anything.
Right.
But we have the
I remember you used
workshops.
to juggle during them, and that was pretty good.
There's one class where we actually put the relatives into the shoes of the ill relative.
Oh, wow.
With voices, and so you know exactly what your relative is going through.
Yeah.
But after the impact that this class has on families is just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And I urge anybody out there, whether you're in Dade County or whatever county you're in, just search NAMI.
Right.
Like for me, it's NAMIBroward.org. And look at all the different programs that we have. There's also another program called Peer-to-Peer, and it's actually for the consumers.
Right.
And they teach each other about the
Yes.
different things with mental illness. It's not really a support group, but it could be a support group because they're all together and they're learning the same things that we teach as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's that camaraderie. It's the fellowship. It's being around people that are dealing with similar things.
100%.
That's huge.
100%.
And for the consumer, or you know, the person, or for the families, because the reality is, just like with addiction, people that are family members of those in active addiction with drugs or alcohol, or suffering with major depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar, whatever it is, they're going through a lot of stuff too, and it is very difficult for them. And they may feel like, who do I talk to? You know? And sometimes they even pull back from talking to their loved one because they don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't know what to do.
Or they isolate.
You're walking on eggshells, yeah. They're isolating.
Well, sometimes the family members are walking on eggshells as well.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The family members are afraid to get involved or say anything, and sometimes they pull back, and then that sometimes could be taken as, well, even my family doesn't care about me anymore.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So it's kind of a slippery slope there with that as far as...
And sometimes they're, you know, people with, that have mental illness or addiction can be narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they are, but they can be.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, because they always look at themselves really as the victim. You know, and unfortunately, they don't think the same as we do. They do not live in the same reality as we do. So if we say something, something that really makes sense to us,
Right.
that's not going to make sense to them.
Yes.
And that's not their fault either.
Well, DJ Jaffe from, he's the executive director of Mental Illness Policy Organization, and he was on a couple of weeks ago, and he really broke that down very well as far as from their perspective and what they're actually dealing with, the person that's suffering with that. And it's really, it could be very difficult to relate because it's a totally different, you know, world from that perspective. And but he broke that down really well. And there's some great people there too. Edna Einhorn, who's the president of
Phenomenal.
Amazing, right? I mean, it's just Milt, her husband. I would go to these events and these walks and stuff, and Milt would be like carrying all this stuff.
He's a photographer.
He's a photographer, and it's just incredible the time that they invest with NAMI.
Yeah,
they really do.
She has brought, Edna herself has brought NAMI to a different level.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no doubt about it.
And Sandra does a great job.
Yeah, Sandra is our
executive director.
Executive, yeah,
Right,
ED.
right, absolutely. So let's shift back to a little bit from your family law practice now. Without being specific, you know, what type of cases have you dealt with your practice that involve mental illness or addiction?
Well, in my family law cases, and which the divorce cases, I have several that there are addiction or mental health issues. And I just want to stress, before I go onto the other types of law that I do, that if you suffer from mental illness and you have children and you take your medication like you're supposed to, there's no reason for you not to have your kids.
Right.
So just understand that. The same with your addiction. If you don't use drugs, or alcohol, there's no reason why you cannot have your children.
Right.
So that's my family law. My dependency, as I said before, that's when the state comes in and takes your kids. And it's kind of the same thing. The court will usually put you in on a case plan, and you have to jump through hoops to get your kids back.
Right.
Because clearly you've done something. And if it's addiction, they'll make you go to your classes. If it's anger management, you go to anger management. Then I also do domestic violence, which that sometimes
That's probably
can
a big
entail.
one, right?
Yeah, I just had that this morning.
Right.
I also do civil litigation, which is either county or circuit,
Right.
and the difference between those are just the dollar amounts.
Right.
And with circuit, a judge, can take away your liberty, your life,
Yeah.
your kids.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you think about it now, even with the gun laws and things like that and all these different things, people might be reluctant to even say, hey, I'm dealing with this. I know we used to deal with that a lot with first responders, in particular law enforcement. They would be very reluctant to say anything about depression or suicide or addiction, because there goes their badge, there goes their gun, right? And so they'll protect that at all costs.
Absolutely. And NAMI is also an organization, just going back to NAMI, we're called the Stigma Busters.
Nice.
And if I can just give a second about an incident that I had as a Stigma Buster.
Sure.
Years ago, there was a commercial on TV with a particular car dealership. And they had a guy in a straitjacket. I can't remember all the stuff, but he was in a straitjacket, and it was basically like, if you don't buy this type of car, this is what's going to happen to you. And, they show the person. I was so offended by it, and thank God my relatives did not see that I actually wrote a letter to the owner. And to my surprise, I got a letter back from the owner apologizing, saying that he also had a member in his family that suffered from mental illness, and they took that commercial off the TV.
Excellent.
So, Stigma Busters.
There you go. I mean, just that's great. As far as with the law enforcement too, I mean, if you look at the suicide rates with law enforcement, it's a very, very high stress, pressure job, especially nowadays with everybody recording every move you make.
Yes.
But I mean, if you're afraid to go to the chief and you're afraid to go to HR, I know they would go to the chaplains a lot, because I used to deal with them, not just with law enforcement, but with the fire department, Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. They would feel a little bit more comfortable going to the chaplain and talking to. But if you think you're going to go say that you're struggling with something, and the next thing you know, you're suspended, and who knows what happens, you're going to be reluctant to do that.
Sure.
Well, tell us a little bit about the CIT program with law enforcement. That was a big program with NAMI. I used to be involved with that. I had a really high-level position. My job was to get the cake for the graduation.
My job was to give out the certificates.
Was it? Yeah.
And to do a little speech on the Monday and on the Friday.
That was it. That was my role for like a year.
But NAMI actually is one of the sponsors of CIT. CIT stands for Crisis Intervention Team.
Yes.
And this is for police officers. And what CIT does, and it's a week-long program, starts Monday to Friday, and I think they have to put 40 hours in, and the majority of the police officers that come into the class on Monday are completely changed by Friday.
Yeah.
Because they really don't have the knowledge about mental illness and addiction, so it teaches them all about that. It also teaches them how to de-escalate. If they go to somebody's house and somebody's having a psychotic break, it teaches the police officers to de-escalate the situation. Most of the Broward Sheriff's Office has taken this. The other agencies also take it, and it's given almost monthly.
Yeah, I remember BSO used to have like so many people at the
always had the most. BSO always had the most.
Yeah, but other cities too. But what motivates you to make a difference? You've been involved with so many different things. You've invested so much time with all of these nonprofits and different things and training and courses. I mean, that takes a lot. It's time consuming, and what is it? What is it that motivates you to really make a difference and be out there on the front lines?
I think I was put on this earth to really be a public servant, and that's one of the reasons I also want to be a judge. I think I have so much to offer. Besides my legal experience, I've been in the legal field for almost 40 years, as a practicing attorney, 18. But my public service through all those years, by being a judge, I believe I can make a difference. And the difference is I have to follow the law, but it gives you the integrity, it gives you respect for people, it gives you the right temperament, and you never will prejudge because you have all this life experience and
That's
know.
So true. So true. That's great. So what you're running, it's what, Broward County, right?
Yeah, I'm running for Broward County Judge in Group 17. The election is August 28th. Please go out there and vote for me, Rhoda Ann Sokoloff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Get out there and vote for her. And she has a tremendous heart, and she will do an excellent job. If you or someone you know is in need of treatment, take that leap of faith. Go online, Banyan's Faith and Recovery program, faithandrecovery.com. or BanionTreatmentCenter.com. You could call us at 888-270-5712. Or if you have any questions or you want questions to be answered on the next show, text or call 201-538-2754, 201-538-2754. Thank you for joining us. Psalm 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. God bless you. Thanks for joining us.